Look, I know what you're thinking. 68 years old, digging through garbage cans like some, I don't know, like some homeless person. But let me tell you something. When your pension disappears because some corporate bastards decide to rob their own employees, you do what you have to do. So there I was, Tuesday morning, maybe 7 a.m. The sun was just coming up, and I'm bent over this rusted garbage can on Elm Street, my back screaming at me, my hands shaking like leaves because they always shake now. Arthritis. Getting old sucks, in case you were wondering. I'm separating cans from bottles, trying to make my $3 for the day, when I hear it. Slam! That gate. Dorian's gate. My son's gate. My stomach just dropped because I knew she was coming. Maribel. Her heels are clicking on the concrete. Click, click, click. Like a timer counting down to my humiliation. I straighten up slow because what choice do I have? My back's killing me. But I turn around and there she is. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect everything. Standing there like I'm something she's stepped in. You disgusting old woman. That's how she starts. Not good morning, not how are you feeling today, just straight to the venom. Do you have any idea what the neighbors are saying about us? And before I can even open my mouth to defend myself, she does it. She spits right at my feet. I'm not kidding. She actually spits on the ground in front of me like I'm nothing. Mrs. Patterson is watching from across the street. 2 kids walking to school slow down to stare. Even old Mr. Chen, who's always been polite to me, he practically runs away like I've got some disease. You're a disgrace to the family name, she says, louder now, making sure everyone can hear. Look at you, digging through trash like some kind of rat. A rat. She called me a rat. But here's the thing that broke my heart. I looked past her to the doorway, and there's Dorian, my son, my baby boy who I raised by myself after his father died, standing there in his perfect banker suit with his perfect tie, watching his wife destroy his mother. Her eyes meet for maybe 2 seconds. 2 seconds where I'm begging him, please, please say something. Defend me. Tell her to stop. He looks away. Just looks away. Even your own son is ashamed of what you've become, Maribel says. Because apparently, humiliating me wasn't enough. She had to twist the knife. Then she does something that I still can't believe she did this. She walks over to my pile of recyclables, my whole morning's work, my grocery money for the week, and kicks it. Just kicks it like it's garbage. Well, I guess to her it was garbage. Go ahead, she says, stepping back with this smirk on her face. Pick up your treasures like the rat you are. The kids are laughing now. Mrs. Patterson won't even look at me. So, I get down on my knees, on that cold, dirty concrete, and I start picking up my cans, my bottles, and mixed in with everything else, there's this little bundle of old papers that must have fallen out of someone's trash. I stuff them in my bag without thinking. As I'm walking away, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst, I whispered something to myself. I thought this was the end of my dignity, but I didn't know it was only the beginning. If your own child's wife spat on you in front of the whole street, would you walk away quietly or fight back? You want to know how I ended up like this? Digging through garbage at 68? Well, sit down, because this is gonna piss you off. I wasn't always. I mean, I had a life, a real life. I worked at Pemberton Manufacturing for 23 years. Decent job, steady paycheck, health insurance. Nothing fancy, but we got by. Me and Richard, my husband. Richard was everything. Worked the factory floor while I did the clerical stuff. We had this little house. Nothing special, but it was ours. And Dorian was our world. Then Richard dies. Just like that. Heart attack. At 59. 1 minute he's complaining about the coffee being too weak. Next minute he's on the kitchen floor and I'm screaming at the paramedics to do something, anything. Sorry. Never mind. So there I am, widow with a teenage son, thinking at least I've got the pension coming. 23 years of contributions, right? They can. They absolutely can. Company goes under 6 months after Richard dies. Restructuring, they called it. Financial difficulties. Bunch of suits in expensive cars, driving away while people like me get letters in the mail, unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control. Right. Circumstances beyond their control. The pension fund? Gone. Vanished. Lawyers got rich fighting over scraps, while I'm trying to figure out how to feed my kid on Social Security that wouldn't cover our grocery bill. But here's what kills me. Dorian made it out. Smart kid, good grades, got himself into college somehow. Business degree, then banking, worked his way up, got the house, got the car, got Maribel. I should have known she was trouble from the start. The first time I met her, she looked at me like I was something stuck to her shoe. But she was pretty, and she made Dorian smile. And after everything we'd been through, I thought, maybe this is good. Maybe he deserves someone polished, someone who'll push him to be better. I was so stupid. The complaints started small. Dorian, your mother's clothes are so outdated. Dorian, does she have to come to dinner looking like that? Dorian, what will people think? And my son who I raised alone, who I worked double shifts for, who I sold everything to put through school? He started agreeing with her. Mom, maybe you could try dressing up a little more. Mom, Maribel's friends are coming over. Maybe you could, I don't know, maybe visit Mrs. Chen for the afternoon? Then came the recyclables. Look, I'm not proud of it, okay? But Social Security doesn't cover everything. And my arthritis medication alone costs, never mind what it costs. I needed the extra money. $5, $10 a day from cans and bottles? That's groceries. That's keeping the lights on. But Maribel, she's ruining our reputation, she'd hiss at Dorian when she thought I couldn't hear. The neighbors are talking. My colleagues drive past here and see her digging through trash like some homeless person. And Dorian would say, I know, I'll talk to her. But he never did. Not directly, just these little hints. Mom, maybe you don't need to collect so much. Mom, maybe you could do it farther from the house. Stay out of sight. That's what he was really saying. Stay out of sight so I don't have to be embarrassed by you. There were other things too. Weird things I didn't understand at the time. Like those hushed arguments between Dorian and Maribel about papers and documents. I'd walk into the kitchen and they'd stop talking, change the subject real fast. I figured it was their finances, none of my business. And this one time, this is strange, but Dorian asked me if I ever kept any of Dad's old work stuff. Files, documents, anything from Pemberton Manufacturing? I said no, of course not. Why would I? Company went under. What good would old papers do? But he kept pushing. Are you sure, Mom? Sometimes people keep things in boxes, forget about them. I thought it was odd, but, well, grief makes people ask strange questions sometimes. The neighbors started changing too. Mrs. Patterson used to bring me leftover bread sometimes. Suddenly she's crossing the street when she sees me coming. Mr. Chen stops nodding hello. And the whispers. God, the whispers. I'd be walking home from the store, and I hear bits of conversation behind me, embarrassing her son like that. Mental problems, probably. Maribel Santos was telling me. Maribel Santos. Of course. But the thing that really scared me? This black car that started showing up. Just sitting there, across from my little shack, 2 men inside, watching. I'd peek through the curtains, and there they'd be, not even trying to hide it. One night, I saw one of them get out, walk around my place real slow, looking at my recycling bags like they were, I don't know, like they were important somehow. I told myself I was being paranoid, old lady living alone, imagination running wild. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I thought Maribel's cruelty was the worst of it, but something darker had already taken root around me. Should I have seen this coming sooner?
You know what? I decided I wasn't going to take it anymore. After that whole spitting incident, after watching my neighbors look at me like I was some kind of disease, I thought, enough. I'm his mother. I raised him. I deserve better than this. So I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I went to his office. God, that was humiliating from the minute I walked in. The receptionist looked at me like I'd crawled out of a dumpster, which, to be fair, I kind of had that morning because I needed the money for bus fare to get there. I'm here to see Dorian Santos, I tell her. She looks me up and down, my old coat, my scuffed shoes, my hands that probably still smelled like garbage juice. And she goes, "Do you have an appointment?" An appointment to see my own son. I'm his mother, I say. The way she said, "Oh," like that explained everything. Like, of course, the crazy bag lady would be related to someone who works here. She makes this phone call, whispering into the receiver, and finally, Dorian comes out to get me. His face. Christ, his face looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Mom," he says, all tight-lipped and professional, "what are you doing here?" What am I doing there? What am I doing there? I need to talk to you about Maribel, about how she... Not here, he cuts me off, looking around like he's afraid his coworkers are listening, which they probably were. Come to my office. So we walk through this maze of cubicles, and I can feel everyone staring, probably wondering who this old woman is and why she smells like, well, like she's been digging through trash. His office is nice, really nice. Big desk, fancy computer, family photo of him and Maribel at some beach resort that probably cost more than I see in 6 months. No picture of me, by the way. Just saying. I sit down in this leather chair that probably costs more than my rent, and I start talking. I tell him about the spitting, about the neighbors, about how his wife is destroying what's left of my dignity. And you know what he does? He looks annoyed, like I'm bothering him with something trivial. Mom, he says, rubbing his forehead like he's getting a headache, maybe if you stopped digging through trash, Maribel wouldn't be so what? I interrupt. So embarrassed by me? So ashamed that her husband came from this? I gestured to myself.
He doesn't answer, just reaches into his desk drawer and pulls out his wallet. Then he does something that, even now, thinking about it makes my chest hurt. He slides 3 $20 bills across that fancy desk like I'm some beggar he's trying to get rid of. Take this, he says. Buy food like a normal person. Stop humiliating me. Stop humiliating him. Dorian, I say, and my voice is shaking now. Do you remember when your father died? Do you remember how I worked double shifts at the factory just to keep you in school? How I sold my wedding ring to buy your textbooks? That was a long time ago, Mom. A long time ago. Like it doesn't matter. Like those years of sacrifice, of going without so he could have better, like none of it matters now that he's got his nice office and his perfect wife. I'm crying now. I can't help it. Big, ugly tears that I try to wipe away before anyone sees, but it's too late. Please, I whisper, just talk to her. Ask her to treat me like a human being. That's all I'm asking. He looks away. Won't even meet my eyes. I have a meeting in 5 minutes, Mom. That's it? That's all I get? 5 minutes of his precious time. I take the money. Because I need it. Because my pride isn't worth more than eating dinner tonight, and I hate myself for it. But I take it. I'm walking out through those cubicles again, feeling smaller than I've ever felt in my life when I hear her voice. Maribel. She's in the lobby talking on her phone, probably thinking I'm already gone. Oh, you should have seen her, she's saying, laughing. Showed up here looking like exactly what she is. Dorian was mortified. I stopped walking. I can't help it. The pathetic thing is, she actually thinks begging will change anything. Too stupid to realize she's nothing but baggage now, dead weight we have to drag around. Baggage. Dead weight. I'm standing there in the middle of this fancy bank lobby, clutching $60 like it's some kind of lifeline, listening to my son's wife talk about me like I'm garbage. The bus ride home was, God, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm sitting there with my recycling bag on my lap because, yes, I brought it with me because I'm not wasting a trip to town. And I'm feeling everything at once. Rage. That's the big one. Pure white-hot rage at both of them. But also shame. So much shame I thought it might choke me. And betrayal. The kind that cuts so deep, you think you might bleed out right there on public transportation. My son. My baby boy, who I sacrificed everything for, taking his wife's side, treating me like I'm some embarrassing problem that needs to be managed. I clutched that bag tighter, feeling the crinkle of papers and cans inside, and I thought about everything I'd lost. My husband, my job, my pension, my dignity. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined as I sat there on that bus watching the city blur past through tears, I thought that was the lowest point. I thought Their betrayal had only just begun. Would you stay silent if your own child turned his back on you? Or would you confront them again?
After that office humiliation, I thought, I don't know what I thought, that maybe things would calm down, that maybe Maribel would get tired of torturing an old woman. I was so naive. She escalated. And when I say escalated, I mean she declared war. First, it was the rumors. Oh, God, the rumors. Mrs. Patterson suddenly won't even look at me. One day she's ignoring me. The next day she's peeking through her curtains like I'm some kind of criminal. So I ask her what's wrong. "Callista," she says, all nervous and twitchy. "Maribel Santos mentioned you've been confused lately, taking things that don't belong to taking things? Taking things? What are you talking about?" I ask her. "The recycling," she whispers, looking around like we're discussing state secrets. "She said you've been going through people's bins, taking things that aren't meant for collection." I try to explain that recycling is recycling, that once it's on the curb, it's fair game, but she's already backing away. "I don't want any trouble with Maribel," she says. "Her husband works at the bank, you know. They have influence." Influence. Right. Then Mr. Chin stops his daily walks past my place. The teenage boys who used to just ignore me start pointing and whispering. I catch bits of conversations, mental problems, probably stealing, families embarrassed. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was Maria Gonzalez. Maria and I used to chat sometimes. She'd save her soda cans for me, leave them in a separate bag so I wouldn't have to dig. Sweet lady, always asked about my arthritis. One morning, I see her putting out her recycling, so I walk over with a smile, ready for our usual chat. She slams her gate shut, actually slams it. "I can't," she says through the bars. "Maribel came by yesterday. She said you're not well, Callista, that you might get violent if people don't give you what you want." Violent. Me, a 68-year-old woman with arthritis who can barely lift a bag of tans? "Maria, you know me," I plead. "Have I ever?" "I can't risk it," she says. "I have grandchildren who visit. I can't take chances." And she goes inside, leaves me standing there like some kind of leper. But what I didn't know was that this was just the warm-up. 3 days later, I wake up in my little shack, my home. It's been vandalized. Someone painted "trash rat" across the front wall in red paint, big, dripping letters that you can see from the street, like a scarlet letter, you know, marking me as something disgusting. I called the police. Of course I called the police. You want to know what Officer Martinez tells me? "Ma'am, this looks like a neighborhood dispute. Maybe you should consider adjusting your activities so you don't upset people." Adjusting my activities. Like surviving is something I should apologize for? "Someone vandalized my home," I tell him. "This is a crime." He looks around my shack, the peeling paint, the sagging roof, the recycling bags stacked along the side, and I can see it in his eyes. This place isn't worth protecting. I'm not worth protecting. "Look," he says, not unkindly, but not kindly either. "Maybe whoever did this was trying to send you a message. Maybe it's time to listen." A message. Right. I spend my arthritis medication money on paint remover and a brush. My hands shake so bad I can barely hold it, but I scrub at those letters for hours.
The red paint comes off mostly, but you can still see the ghost of those words if you know where to look. Trash rat. That night, I'm sitting in my kitchen, eating a can of soup because it's all I can afford, when I see them again. The black car, parked right across from my place. This time, one of the men gets out. He's wearing a suit, not expensive, but respectable. He walks around my property real slow, like he's inspecting it. Then he comes to my door and knocks. My heart's pounding, but I answer because what choice do I have? "Excuse me, ma'am. I'm a little lost. Could you tell me how to get to Maple Street?" But here's the thing. His eyes aren't looking at me. They're looking past me, into my shack, at my bags of recyclables, at the papers and cans and bottles I've been collecting. "Maple Street's 2 blocks north," I tell him. "Thanks," he says, but he doesn't leave. He just stands there, studying my recycling like it's important somehow. "You collect a lot of materials," he says. "Just trying to get by," I mumble. He nods, tips his hat, and walks back to the car. But I watch him through my window and I see him talking to his partner, pointing at my place. They sit there for another 20 minutes before driving away. I lock my door, both locks. Not that they do much good against anyone determined to get in, but it makes me feel, I don't know, less vulnerable, maybe. That night, lying in my creaky bed, listening to every sound outside, I thought the walls were already closing in on me. I thought the cruelty, the isolation, the fear, I thought that was rock bottom. But I hadn't seen how far they'd go.
You know what's funny about rock bottom? Sometimes there's a trap door. I'm sitting in my shack 3 days after the vandalism, sorting through my recyclables like I do every morning, cans in one pile, bottles in another, trying to make enough for groceries because the paint remover wiped out my food budget. My hands are shaking worse than usual. Probably the stress. Maybe I need to see a doctor, but who has money for that? And I'm digging through this bag from Tuesday's collection when I feel something different. Papers. But not just any papers. These are in a neat little bundle tied with what used to be white string, but now it's yellow and brittle. The papers themselves are yellow too, like they've been sitting in someone's attic for, I don't know, decades? I almost throw them away. Almost. But something makes me look closer. These aren't just random documents. They're official looking. Fancy borders, raised seals, that heavy paper stock they used to use for important stuff. And then I see a name that makes my heart stop. Pemberton Manufacturing. Richard's company. My husband's company. My hands are really shaking now as I spread them out on my kitchen table. Bearer bonds, they say, issued to Richard Santos in 1987. Share certificates. Stock options that were never exercised. I remember Richard mentioning something about company shares once, way back when we were young and stupid and thought we had all the time in the world. He said he got some kind of stock options as part of his benefits package, but we never did anything with them because we needed the cash from his regular paycheck. Someday, he used to say, someday we'll cash those in and take that trip to Hawaii. But someday never came, did it? I stare at these papers for maybe an hour,
trying to figure out if they're real or just, I don't know, worthless garbage someone threw away. But they look real. They feel real. There's only one person I trust with money stuff, Mr. Hernandez at First National. He's been there forever. Helped me when Richard died. Never treated me like I was stupid or beneath him. So I bundle these papers up real careful, stuff them in my purse, and take the bus downtown. The bank is busy. Lots of people in suits making important transactions. And here I am in my thrift store coat smelling like, well, like I've been digging through recycling. But Mr. Hernandez sees me and waves me over to his desk. "Calista," he says, warm like always. "How can I help you today?" I pull out the papers, spread them on his desk, and watch his face change. First confusion, then surprise, then something else. Something that makes him lean forward and adjust his glasses. "Where'd you get these?" he asks, quiet like. "They were my husband's, from the company. I found them." He's studying them real close now, pulling out a magnifying glass, checking watermarks and signatures. The silence is killing me. Finally, he looks up. "Calista," he whispers, glancing around to make sure nobody's listening. "Do you have any idea what you have here? Old stock certificates, I guess?" He shakes his head. "These are bearer bonds from before the company went under. But here's the thing. Pemberton Manufacturing was acquired by Consolidated Industries right before the bankruptcy. These bonds, they were never redeemed." "What does that mean?" He leans even closer. "It means they're still valid, still worth, Calista, these could be worth millions, maybe more." Millions? I can't even process that word. "Are you sure?" I whisper. He says, "I need to verify everything, run some checks, but these look legitimate, very legitimate." For the first time in years, I feel something I'd forgotten existed. Hope. The bus ride home feels like I'm floating on air. My mind is racing with possibilities. A real house, medical care, dignity, maybe even my son would respect me again if I had money. Maybe Maribel would stop treating me like garbage if I wasn't poor anymore. I'm practically dancing when I get to my shack. Dancing! Me at 68 with arthritis. First thing I do is hide those papers. I'm not stupid. If these are worth what Mr. Hernandez thinks they're worth, they're not staying on my kitchen table. I roll them up tight, wrap them in plastic, and stuff them inside my old coffee can, the one I keep in the back of my kitchen cabinet behind the flour I never use. Safe and sound. Then I sit down to figure out what to do next. Maybe I should call Mr. Hernandez tomorrow, set up a proper appointment. Maybe I should... Wait, did I remember to get my arthritis medication while I was in town? I check my purse. No pills. Damn it. The excitement made me completely forget. And the pharmacy closes at 6, so if I want my medication tonight... I grab my jacket and head back out. The bus to town, quick trip to the pharmacy, then home to start my new life. I'm practically skipping down the street. People are staring at me like I've lost my mind, crazy old lady grinning like an idiot, but I don't care. For the first time in forever, I have hope. But when I get back to my shack an hour later, the door is hanging open. That's not right. I locked it. I always lock it. I step inside and my heart just stops. The place has been ransacked, drawers pulled out, cushions thrown around, my few belongings scattered everywhere, and standing in my kitchen, Dorian and Maribel,
My son is holding something in his hands. The coffee can. Empty. And those papers, my papers, they're spread out on my kitchen table. Looking for these, Mom? He says, and there's this smirk on his face that I've never seen before. Cold, calculating. How did you find them? Maribel laughs. Please, you think hiding $1 million bonds in a coffee can makes you some kind of criminal mastermind? Those are mine, I whisper. No, Dorian says, folding them up. These were Dad's, which makes them family assets, which means I handle them now. I watch my future, my hope, my dignity, my chance at a real life disappear into his jacket pocket. Just like that. The only chance I had slipped away into their hands.
You want to know what desperation looks like? It looks like a 68-year-old woman in a free clinic waiting room holding a crumpled business card for a lawyer who probably charges more per hour than I see in a month. But I had to try. I had to fight back somehow. After they stole my papers, I spent 3 days just sitting, staring at that empty coffee can, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe I was going crazy like Maribel kept telling everyone. Maybe those papers were just, I don't know, worthless junk, and I built this whole fantasy in my head. But then I remembered Mr. Hernandez's face, the way he leaned in and whispered millions. That was real. That happened. So I scraped together bus fare and went to see Attorney Morrison, cheapest lawyer in the phone book, office above a pizza place. But still a lawyer, right? Wrong. Mrs. Santos, he says after I tell him everything, do you have any proof these documents existed? Any copies? Any witnesses besides the bank employee? Well, no, but... And your son has hired Kellerman Walsh and Associates to represent his interests in this matter. I don't know who that is, but from the way he says it, I'm guessing they're not working above a pizza place. They're claiming you're mentally incompetent, he continues, like he's reading my grocery list. That you've been exhibiting signs of dementia, paranoid delusions about valuable documents that don't exist. But they do exist. My son has them. He gives me this look, this pity look. Mrs. Santos, even if these documents existed, your son would have legitimate claim to his father's estate as the next of kin, unless you can prove, I'm his widow. I interrupt. Doesn't that count for something? Only if you can prove it in court, which requires evidence, which you don't have. Evidence. Right. The meeting lasts maybe 10 minutes before he's showing me to the door, telling me to think carefully about whether I really want to pursue this. Translation: go away, crazy old lady. But Maribel wasn't done with me yet. Oh no. 2 days later, I'm at the grocery store trying to decide between cereal or milk because I can't afford both when I hear her voice behind me. Oh my God, is that her? The one I was telling you about? I turn around and she's standing there with 2 other women, younger, dressed nice, looking at me like I'm some kind of exhibit at the zoo. That's Dorian's mother, the one with the mental problems. She's been going around town claiming she found $1 million bonds in the garbage. The other women are staring. Other shoppers are starting to notice. In the garbage, one of them repeat, and they all laugh. She even went to a lawyer.
Maribel continues, tried to claim my husband stole imaginary documents from her. It's really sad, actually. Dementia hits some people so hard. Dementia? Mental problems? Imaginary documents? I want to scream. I want to grab her perfect face and shake her until she admits the truth. But I'm standing there in my thrift store clothes with my arthritis medicine rattling in my purse, looking exactly like what she's describing, a crazy old woman. I leave the store without buying anything. Can't face the stairs anymore. At night, I collapse. Just collapse. Right there on my kitchen floor while trying to make a cup of tea. One minute I'm standing, the next I'm on the linoleum, wondering why the ceiling looks so far away. Mrs. Patterson finds me the next morning when she comes to complain about my recycling bags being too close to the property line. Instead of complaining, she calls an ambulance. I wake up in some kind of clinic. Not a hospital, can't afford that, but one of those free places where they treat people like me. People with no insurance and no family who cares enough to visit. The doctor says it was exhaustion, stress. Are you eating enough, Mrs. Santos? Are you taking care of yourself? Am I taking care of myself? Lady, I'm trying to survive. They keep me overnight for observation. Nobody comes. Nobody calls. I lie there in that narrow bed listening to other people's families visiting, bringing flowers and get well cards. And I realize I'm completely alone. But the next morning, something happens. Mr. Hernandez shows up. He looks around the clinic room and takes in my situation, and his face, God, his face looks so sad. Callista, he says, pulling up a plastic chair. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. It's fine, I lie. I'm fine. No, he says, you're not, and neither is this situation. He reaches into his briefcase and pulls out a folder, thick folder, full of papers. I've been doing some research since you brought me those bonds, calling in favors, checking old records, digging through archives. My heart starts beating faster.
And he opens the folder, but then stops. Looks around the room like he's making sure we're alone. What I'm about to tell you, this stays between us until you decide what to do with it. Understand? I nod. Those bonds you found, they're not just worth millions, Callista. They're worth billions. With a B. Billions. That's not even a real number to someone like me. But here's the thing, he continues. I looked into the legal side of this. Pemberton Manufacturing, the acquisition, the bankruptcy, all of it. He pulls out a document, but holds it so I can't quite see it clearly. These bonds were issued specifically to your husband as part of a pension plan that was never properly dissolved when the company was sold. Legally, they belong to his estate, and since you were his legal wife, they're mine. I breathe. They're yours alone. As his widow, you have sole claim. Your son has no legal right to them whatsoever. None. The room is spinning. But Dorian said, your son lied to you, Callista. And I think he's been lying for a long time. He leans closer, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Those arguments you heard between him and his wife about papers and documents, I think they've known about this for years. I think they've been waiting for you to find these bonds, hoping you'd be too confused or scared to do anything about them. The pieces start falling into place. Dorian's strange questions about his father's work papers, the way Maribel escalated her cruelty right before I found the documents, the men in the black car watching me. They've been keeping me broken on purpose. So when the time came, you'd be too beaten down to fight back. But Callista, you don't have to sign anything away. You don't have to give them what's rightfully yours. He starts to show me more documents, legal papers that prove everything he's saying, but then we hear footsteps in the hallway. He quickly closes the folder. Think about what I've told you, but be careful who you trust. If I'm right about this, their greed is about to cut deeper than you ever imagined. At this point, would you keep fighting or finally give up? 3 days after Mr. Hernandez's visit, they came for me. Not the men in the black car this time. Worse. My own son. I'm sitting on my front steps sorting through the morning's recyclables because bills don't stop just because your world's been turned upside down. When I hear that familiar gate slam. But this time, Dorian's walking alone. No Maribel clicking behind him in her perfect heels. Just my son striding across the street like he owns it, like he owns me. We need to talk, Mom. His voice is different, colder, like he's dropped some kind of pretense he's been carrying around. About what? I ask, even though I know exactly what. He sits down next to me on the step, close enough that I can smell his expensive cologne, but far enough that it feels threatening somehow. About your little fantasy. About those documents you think belong to Dad. Think belonged? Think? They did belong to your father. No, Mom. They belonged to the family, to the estate, which makes them mine to handle. That's not what? Some banker told you? You think Mr. Hernandez is looking out for you. You think he gives a damn about a broke old woman who digs through trash? The way he says digs through trash, like it's the most disgusting thing in the world. Dorian, I start, but he cuts me off. Let me tell you something, Mom. Something I should have told you years ago. He turns to face me, and for a second, just a second, I see my little boy. Then he opens his mouth and destroys that memory forever. I knew about Dad's bonds from the beginning. Found the paperwork when I was cleaning out his stuff after the funeral. Knew they were worth a fortune even back then. My blood goes cold. You knew? Of course I knew. But I also knew that if you found out, you'd probably blow it somehow, spend it on medical bills or give it away to charity or some stupid thing like that. Those bonds could have saved us. When we lost everything, when I was working double shifts just to what? To keep us poor? And do you see this house? He gestures toward his perfect little house across the street. Do you see my car? My life? I built all of that knowing someday I'd have access to real money, real wealth. But I was struggling. I was collecting garbage just to eat. And that, he says, standing up now, looking down at me like I'm something stuck to his shoe, was the point. The point. The point. You see, I needed you to stay
broken, stay desperate, because broken people don't ask questions. Desperate people don't hire lawyers or dig into family finances. My hands are shaking. Not from arthritis this time, from pure, white-hot rage. And Maribel, I ask.
His smile gets wider. Maribel was perfect, smart, ruthless, willing to do whatever it took to keep you in line. I told her about the bonds before I even proposed, made it clear that managing the mother problem was part of the deal. Managing the mother problem. That's what I was to him, a problem to be managed. She enjoyed it, you know, the humiliation, the rumors, breaking you down piece by piece. She said it was like training a dog. You just had to be consistent with the punishment. I can't breathe. So all of it, the spitting, the neighbors turning against me, the vandalism, all planned, all necessary. He shrugs like we're discussing the weather. We needed you isolated, ashamed, too broken to fight back when the time came. When what time came? When you finally found the bonds, of course. We knew you would eventually. We made sure of it. What does that even mean? You think it was coincidence that those documents ended up in recycling on your route? We've been watching you for months, Mom, learning your patterns, figuring out exactly where to place them so you'd find them naturally. The room is spinning. The world is spinning. You planted them? We needed you to find them yourself, needed you to feel like you'd discovered something, because then, when we took them away, you'd be too confused and defeated to realize what had really happened. This isn't real. This can't be real. But it backfired, I whispered. I went to the bank. I found out what they were really worth. His face darkens. Yes, that was unexpected, but it doesn't change anything. You have no proof, no copies, no legal standing. Those bonds are mine now. Actually, says a voice behind us. We both turn, and there's Mr. Hernandez walking up my front path. He's carrying that same thick folder from the clinic, but now he looks confident, determined. Mrs. Santos, he nods to me. Dorian! This is a private family matter, Dorian says, standing up straighter. No, Mr. Hernandez replies. This is fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse, and theft. He opens the folder and pulls out a stack of papers, official-looking papers, with seals and signatures. I've spent the last 3 days verifying everything, the bonds, the legal ownership, the acquisition records, all of it. He hands me a document. Mrs. Santos, according to state law and federal regulations regarding pension benefits, these bearer bonds belong solely to you as Richard Santos' surviving spouse. They cannot be claimed by children, transferred without your written consent, or seized under any circumstances. I'm staring at the paper, trying to read through the legal language, when he says something that makes my heart stop. They're currently valued at $2.3 billion. Billion, with a B. The color drains from Dorian's face. Furthermore, Mr. Hernandez continues, I've documented evidence of a conspiracy to defraud you of these assets, including recorded phone conversations and written communications between your son and daughter-in-law discussing their plans. Recorded, Dorian starts. We've been monitoring your phone calls for the past week, with Mrs. Santos' permission. Amazing what people will say when they think no one's listening. That's when Maribel comes running out of the house. She must have been watching from the window because she looks panicked.
Dorian? Dorian, what's happening? Why is he here? Tell her, Mr. Hernandez says calmly. Dorian looks at his wife, then back at me, and I watch something break inside him. It's over, he says. She knows everything. What do you mean she knows everything? You said you had it handled. You said she was too stupid to... She stops, looks around, realizes that half the neighborhood is watching from their windows and front yards. This is all your fault. You told me this would work. You said she was just some pathetic old woman who wouldn't fight back. I am fighting back, I say, standing up slowly. Both of them look at me like they'd forgotten I was there. I'm fighting back, and I'm winning, and you... I look at my son, really look at him, and I see a stranger. You chose money over your mother. You chose cruelty over kindness. You chose her over me. Mom, if you just... No. My voice is steady now, stronger than it's been in years. I'm done being your victim. I'm done being your problem to manage. I take the legal papers from Mr. Hernandez. How do I claim what's mine? Maribel starts crying. Actually crying. Please, Callista, please. We can work something out. We can share. Share? I look at her. Like you shared kindness with me? Like you shared respect? She falls to her knees right there on my front lawn. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't destroy our lives. I didn't destroy your lives, I tell her. You destroyed mine. I turn to Dorian one last time. My baby boy, who I rocked to sleep, who I sacrificed everything for. I had won, but I realized I had lost my son forever. If this betrayal came from your own blood, how would you even react?
So, that's how I became a billionaire. Weird sentence to say when you're sitting in a penthouse apartment that costs more per month than most people make in a year, isn't it? The legal stuff moved fast after that. Turns out when you have documented evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and elder abuse, the system actually works. Who knew? Dorian got arrested 2 weeks later. The police found evidence on his computer, emails to Maribel, research on the bonds, even a timeline he'd created for when to implement the plan. He'd been preparing for this for years. Years. They charged him with attempted fraud, forgery. Apparently, he'd been practicing forging my signature, and elder abuse. The DA called it one of the most calculated cases of financial manipulation they'd ever seen. He got 5 years. 5 years for destroying his mother's life. Seems light, doesn't it? And Maribel, God, Maribel, she lost everything when the story broke. Her job at the bank fired her immediately, something about moral character and representing the company values. The house they couldn't afford without her income got foreclosed on. I saw her last month. She was standing outside the grocery store with a cardboard sign asking for help. The same grocery store where she'd humiliated me, called me crazy, laughed about my imaginary documents. She looked up when she saw me walking by. Our eyes met for just a second, and I don't know what I saw. Fear, shame, hope that maybe I'd help her. I kept walking. Maybe that makes me a bad person. Maybe I should have been the bigger person, shown mercy, all that stuff they tell you in church. But I remembered her laughing. I remembered her calling me baggage. I remembered her spitting at my feet. So I kept walking. The money?
Christ, the money is more than I can even understand. $2.3 billion. Do you know what that looks like in a bank statement? It doesn't even look real. I bought a nice place. Nothing crazy, I'm still me. But it's got a doorman and heat that works and a kitchen where I can make real meals instead of eating soup from a can. I got my arthritis medication, the good stuff. My hands barely shake anymore.
So that's how I became a billionaire. Weird sentence to say when you're sitting in a penthouse apartment that costs more per month than most people make in a year, isn't it? The legal stuff moved fast after that. Turns out when you have documented evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and elder abuse, the system actually works. Who knew? Dorian got arrested 2 weeks later. The police found evidence on his computer. Emails to Maribel, research on the bonds, even a timeline he'd created for when to implement the plan. He'd been preparing for this for years. Years! They charged him with attempted fraud, forgery, apparently he'd been practicing forging my signature, and elder abuse. The DA called it one of the most calculated cases of financial manipulation they'd ever seen. He got 5 years. 5 years for destroying his mother's life. Seems light, doesn't it? And Maribel, oh God, Maribel. She lost everything when the story broke. Her job at the bank fired her immediately, something about moral character and representing the company values. The house they couldn't afford without her income got foreclosed on. I saw her last month. She was standing outside the grocery store with a cardboard sign asking for help. The same grocery store that she'd humiliated me, called me crazy, laughed about my imaginary documents. She looked up when she saw me walking by. Our eyes met for a second and I don't know what I saw. Fear, shame, hope that maybe I'd help her. I kept walking. Maybe that makes me a bad person. Maybe I should have been the bigger person, shown mercy, all that stuff they tell you in church. But I remembered her laughing. I remembered her calling me baggage. I remembered her spitting at my feet. So I kept walking. The money, Christ, the money, is more than I can even understand. $2.3 billion. Do you know what that looks like in a bank statement? It doesn't even look real. I bought a nice place, nothing crazy, I'm still me, but it's got a doorman and heat that works and a kitchen where I can make real meals instead of eating soup from a can. I got my arthritis medication, the good stuff. My hands barely shake anymore.